You're listening to Karle and Kenner's Hitting the Bar. In the blue corner, we've got Mr. Karle supporting Tottenham. In the red corner, we've got Mr. Kenner supporting Arsenal. Together, they will be discussing all of your football views, all of your football news. So join us here on Karle and Kenner's Hitting the Bar.
Hello and welcome to yet another episode of the football podcast, Karle and Kenner's Hitting the Bar. I'm Chris Karle. I'm now here with our West Ham fan and regular pundit, Geoff Saunders. Hello, Geoff.
Hi, Chris. How are you?
I'm very good. Now, listen, you, as usual, you've got a little bit of a quiz question for us, which we'll give the answer for at the end of the show. So, let's hear it.
Right, okay. 5 managers in the Premier League. Steve Bruce, Frank Lampard, Roy Hodgson, Chris Wilder and Dean Smith all have something in common with each other.
Right.
And it's to do with being managers in the English Premier League.
Right.
What is it?
Okay. We shall find out later on. We are recording this on a Sunday, which is after all the games from the weekend, apart from Everton against Wolves and the North London derby, Arsenal at home to Tottenham, so which we'll talk about in a little while. Let's focus our attention on Manchester United to start with, because they drew away at Southampton. They looked pretty, I don't know, lacklustre. They got beaten by Crystal Palace, who, by the way, here's a fun fact for you. Crystal Palace are the last team to have beaten Manchester United, Arsenal, Liverpool and Man City in their home grounds. So Man United should have maybe seen something coming, but they lack firepower.
Yeah, they do. They lack creativity more than firepower, actually. Rashford and Martial are very good forwards. I mean, as good as they need to be in the Premier League, but where are the chances going to come from? That's the issue. I mean, Mata is a very, very good inside forward, one of the best in Europe, in my opinion. But he needs help, and he isn't getting it.
Yeah, I mean, let's look at Lukaku. Of course, went to Inter Milan, and scored on his debut, which is a bit of a snub to Manchester United, I suppose. Different league, different opportunities. Yeah. He was criticised for being overweight. Gary Neville criticised him. He's come back out fighting, saying he feels much happier at Inter and he's playing under the best manager in the world, which is Conte, of course. And Sanchez has gone there now as well, Alexis Sanchez. Very expensive player, very gifted player.
Indeed, yeah.
Didn't look like it at Manchester United. What do you think the problem was with Sanchez?
I think the problem with Sanchez is the one he's had throughout his career. It's how he is managed. He's always reacted very well and been very productive with a manager that puts his arm around his shoulder, helps him, says, okay, this isn't going right, let's work on this. He doesn't react well to the Mourinho, do it my way or you're out style.
Yeah, cold bullying sort of style.
Yeah, I mean, everywhere he's been a success, except Manchester United under Mourinho.
Right, so you think maybe Mourinho sapped the life out of him or sapped the creativity out of him or something?
I mean, you look at his performance for Arsenal. His numbers for Arsenal were brilliant. They were wonderful. And that's why Manchester United wanted him. But again, the manager there put his arm around his shoulder, helped him, tried to sort things out to make the team play the way that suited Sanchez, and it was successful.
So you think, I mean, difficult to seem such a long time ago now, Arsene Wenger, did you think he had a more gentle sort of a fatherly approach or school teacher approach or something? Or?
Yeah.
And of course, Mourinho, well, we know.
No, Mourinho is very much sort of my way or the highway, isn't it?
Yes.
You will, I will set you up like this. You will do this. You will run there. You will run there. You will, and that you're not going to get anything out of someone like Sanchez.
No. So Sanchez probably he was getting a lot of money at United. Obviously, I know that's not actually the be all and end all when you get to that stage.
Well, when you've got 100 million in the bank, it's not the motivator anymore, is it?
No, I don't think so. A lot of people say, he's sitting on his arse at United earning all that money. But if you're not happy and you feel unloved, it does make a big difference. So he probably feels, I think, a tremendous sense of relief, possibly.
Oh, I would imagine so, yeah. And also, he's probably got a big smile on his face that Manchester United are still paying half his wages. So.
Yeah, I'm sure there is a factor of that. Yeah, I know. But there's going to be a sort of paradox or irony that both he and Lukaku maybe need that loving treatment, arm around kind of thing. Yeah. Suddenly they're going to be freed up and they're going to be brilliant. And Manchester United fans, of course, being illogical, will say, well, look at them now, they're playing really well. Well, it's because maybe Solskjaer and Mourinho definitely didn't put their arm around them and say, you're very gifted, you're lovely, I want you in my team. Can he try doing this instead of that?
Well, yeah, but players are human beings, and we each respond differently to different ways of being motivated. There are a lot of players who need to be pushed and shouted at and almost bullied, if you like. It's a perfectly valid way of managing some players, but not all.
Very interesting about how different players react to different sort of motivations, but I do feel that he's going to come back and bite United fans because they just don't have any firepower, do they? They don't seem to have any. I don't know. There's no bite about them, is there?
No. If they can keep Rashford and Martial fit for the whole of the season, they'll get away with it.
Right, get away with it. Right. Okay.
Yeah. But who's going to create? And aside from Mata in and around the edge of the penalty area, I don't see anything happening there. And certainly, look at last season. Who was creating there?
And Pogba giving the ball away in stupid situations.
Well, exactly, yeah.
Another very gifted player who I think he's another one that definitely needs his ego tickling quite heavily.
Yeah, very much so. But he very clearly wants to leave. He's been agitating to leave. He's been doing everything he possibly can to get a move. He doesn't want to be there. So when it's going to get really tough, when you need to fight in a game, say against Crystal Palace or Southampton, where was Pogba?
Missing, yeah. Clearly, you're right. He wants to leave because his brother every week makes a statement, which is, good for his own PR and everything, running off the back of his brother's name, I suppose, in a way. But every week he's saying, I expect we'll be playing against each other in Spain very soon. Pogba will be great at Madrid. My brother will be great at Madrid. So stoking the fire a bit, and there is no smoke without fire. No. He obviously does want to go. Now, as we're speaking now, we've got, a couple of days till the end of the transfer window, which is making Man United fans and Tottenham fans, which we'll come to in a minute, very, very nervous.
I don't see how a move can happen. Any move that happens will happen as collateral to Neymar leaving PSG and going to either Real Madrid or Barcelona. Now that, at the moment, can't happen because neither Real Madrid nor Barcelona can come up with the money. Now, it's not that a bank wouldn't give them the loan to buy the player. They would. But the rules, the internal rules of each of them, and they are clubs still, remember, not limited companies, their internal rules do not allow them to have that level of debt.
Right.
So any move has got to come along with other players moving in the other direction to make up the balance.
Right.
So let's say Ousmane Dembele going from Barcelona to PSG, Rakitic going as well, plus 100 million or something.
Just a big sort of matrix of moves
and
here.
Then as that unravels, it comes all around. Suddenly there is space for Pogba to go and these other players, but it's going to be complicated.
Right, but you think he's going to go? He certainly wants to go.
Well, he wants to go, yeah. He's made he's not attempted to hide that in any way, has he?
Actually, no, you can't confuse him. You can't accuse him of that, no. You can probably confuse him, but not accuse him. So Pogba wants away. Christian Eriksen at Tottenham, because I want to talk about Tottenham. There's been so much over the last couple of weeks, so much negativity, not coming out of Tottenham so much, but around the Tottenham camp, if you like. Obviously, I follow Tottenham as a supporter on many Facebook pages. Suddenly, the fans are saying, I think he's taken us as far as he can. It's time he moved on. Now, he has... People say he did hint at leaving. Before the Champions League final, he did say... sort of that if we win it, it might be time for a new challenge, time to move on. They didn't win it. He's still there, but you've got some interesting quotes there about what he said this week or this past week.
Yeah, he's made some comments about being I'm only a coach, I'm not responsible for transfers, etc., etc., and that's all on the back of buying Jack Clarke from Leeds. Basically, Potchettino hadn't seen him play. He telephoned Marcelo Bielsa, because Pochettino is a disciple of Bielsa's, and said, what about him? Obviously didn't like the answer that he got. Jack Clarke was only a sort of proposed move to Tottenham because of one of these analytics companies who introduced him to Levy. Now, Jack Clarke last season made 22 appearances for Leeds.
For Leeds, right.
So he wasn't in the Premier League. He's 22 appearances in the Championship, and 18 of those were as a sub. So he's not a regular starter, but he's in a position that Tottenham need, and his numbers were very good. So it's not a case of the manager went to his chairman and said, look, I like this player, can we get him? It's an analytics company going direct to the chairman saying, oh, you should look at this player, and he's very young, 18 years old or whatever he is. But there's no compelling reason. And when Levy mentioned him to Pochettino basically said, no, don't want him. And what did Tottenham do as soon as they get him? They loaned him back to Leeds.
Yeah, which is where he's going to be all season now. So,
well, he's going to be there all season, but he's very unlikely to play.
So he's sitting around doing nothing, not getting any experience, not staying fit.
It will be very unlikely if he plays, because teams in England, they can only have in their matchday squad up to 5 loan players. Leeds already had 5 loan players in their matchdays without him. Add him to it, there's now 6 loan players. So when is he even going to get the chance to play? Why didn't Tottenham loan him out to Brentford or someone and watch him there, see what he does? So they've sent him back to Leeds. He's not going to play.
So he's going to be wasted for a season, gaining nothing.
And it's caused this problem between Pochettino and Levy. Now, apparently they went out for dinner together last Thursday night, and everything is now, they cleared the air, and everything is now wonderful. Now,
just over a dinner, that sorted it all out.
Well, yeah, I mean, it will sort certain things out. But the issue for Pochettino is until the transfer window closes in mainland Europe, which I think is midnight on Monday night or something like that, he doesn't know if he's got Eriksen. He doesn't know if he's got Vertonghen. So that's why they haven't been playing, because what's the point in playing them and setting the team up when they're going to go, and he doesn't know.
So he's not playing them. Tottenham haven't been playing well. People are saying, like I said, the Tottenham fans have been saying, we'll get back to that thing about Pochettino's done enough for us. What has he won? We'll come to that in a moment. But Tottenham haven't been playing, as you say. I mean, to lose at home to Newcastle, who are a dreadful team, is shocking.
Team, yeah.
At home, that is shocking. Eriksen, Vertonghen left on the bench, whatever. The thing about Eriksen is, we're saying this on the radio show that we do for 93.6 Global Radio, football show on a Saturday. We were saying that Eriksen is a gifted player, very good at free kicks, can change a game, but sometimes you don't see him all game.
He goes missing.
Yeah. So I think, the Real Madrid are going to be very wary of what they're buying now in regards to that.
Yes.
But Tottenham, it's not just because he's not being played, because he's a gifted player, etc., etc. He does go missing. It's the atmosphere, I think, probably among the dressing, in the dressing room among the players. That feeling of uncertainty. It's not if he played, we would have won. It's their feeling regarding all that around it.
Indeed.
Not that he's going to change the game and score 3 against Newcastle. It's just the other players knowing that he's staying and everything's okay.
Well, I mean, everybody likes certainty in their workplace, don't they? And they don't have it.
Let's move on to that thing about Pochettino. People saying, he's been at Tottenham for 5 years. What has he ever won?
Yeah, I mean, that argument really winds me up. I get so angry at that. Only one manager is going to win the Premier League each season. So it's just a stupid argument.
Yeah, so what have the other 19 ever won?
It's a moronic argument.
Yeah.
But if you want to go back and look at some numbers, which I did because I got angry at this, since Pochettino took over, the Big Six, they call themselves the Big Six, Manchester City, Liverpool, Chelsea, Spurs, Arsenal and Manchester United. Since Pochettino took over, Manchester City have won 428 points, Liverpool 379 points, Chelsea 376 points, Spurs 372 points, Arsenal 358, and Manchester United, bottom of this list, 356 points. How much did it cost them to do that?
Right, so pound for point kind of thing.
So, Manchester City, it cost them 977 million. That's £2 million per point.
£2 million per point, wow.
Liverpool, 642 million, £1.5 million per point. 25% better, right? Chelsea, 787 million. They're £2 million per point as well.
Jeez.
Arsenal, 358 points, 578 million, £1.5 million per point. Manchester United, 356 points, 876 million, £2.5 million
actually,
per point.
They're the worst.
They've got the lowest number of points of those top 6
per pound,
and they spent 25% more than Manchester City for each point.
So
And Tottenham, 372 points, 373 million, £1 million per point.
They're actually the lowest of the lot by £500,000 per point.
So what's Pochettino done? Well, he saved his club 372 million for a start. If he'd been up with 2 million a point like the others,
he
saved even more compared to Manchester United. So rather than asking about how good Potchettino is, that I think people ought to be looking at those managers at Manchester United, to be honest.
Yes. I mean, actually, during that period that you're talking about there, Manchester United have had 3 different managers, haven't they?
Yeah.
In the last 5 years. Well, was it Moyes and then, and Mourinho and Solskjaer. So there's, there has been quite a change of manager, and Chelsea. That's a perennial thing anyway.
And Manchester United spent 876 million to get 6th place last season.
Yeah.
It's impressive.
Yeah, that's not great, is it? What has any of those other managers ever won? That should be the question. Yeah. Pound for point. I mean, so Tottenham, what he's done there is made them a very efficient, economically speaking, a very efficient business.
Yeah, and
so he's won is money.
It does rather raise a question. What would Spurs have won anything if they'd spent 2 million a point like the others?
Well, no. Who would they? I mean, the thing is, before he took over, what kind of prospects were they?
Well, before
they
he
were like
took
a
over,
5th place team,
okay.
6th place.
In the 13 seasons before he took over, they qualified for Champions League once.
In 13 years.
In the 5 years since he's been there, they've qualified 4 times.
Now, that is, as a Tottenham fan, I'm very happy with him. I think he's a great manager. I think, by the way, he's one of those kind of managers that does put his arm around the players. I think he's very much a role model and a father figure, not the bullying sort of shouting type of manager. I think he's probably has a very good atmosphere in the dressing room. As a Tottenham fan, 4 times out of 5 he's got us in the Champions League. That is a win. That is like the old joke about Arsenal winning the 4th place trophy. Or getting to the top 4 trophy.
Yeah.
Because as you say, only one manager can win the league. The others have won nothing.
Yes.
Apart from maybe the League Cup or the whatever, FA Cup. Getting into top 4 consistently 4 out of 5 times and being in the Champions League. And last season getting to the final. Those are all wins as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
What he's done in those 5 years, it's turned a very ordinary top half of the table team into a team that frightens other European teams so much that we get to the final of the Champions League.
Yes.
That's a remarkable turnaround.
Oh, it's an incredible turnaround. I mean, it shows how good he is.
If my memory serves me right, that one time that we got in the Champions League the other time, when we got as far as the quarterfinals under Harry Redknapp, and I remember the giddiness when Harry Redknapp was being interviewed afterwards on TV, and his son Jamie was interviewing him, and they were hugging and kissing like they'd won the World Cup and solved world hunger at the same time.
Yeah.
The giddiness was ridiculous, and we just got to the quarterfinals by beating Inter Milan, wasn't it?
Inter, yeah, that's right.
And now that's expected under Pochettino. Nobody blinks an eyelid. We've got to get out of the group. If we don't get out of the group stage, it's absolute tragedy. But actually, previous to Pochettino, we were lucky to get into a group stage, let alone out of it.
Yeah, that's right. And under Pochettino, he's got 16 points more than Manchester United and saved them 500 million. It cost 500 million less.
In that period, 500 million.
500 million less. So who's the good manager?
Oh, for 500 million, you could get what? 8 Lukakus or something, if my math serves me right, which it doesn't. But
7.
More than 7, okay. But just for example, I mean, ridiculous. Or I don't know, 4 Pogbas or something. And yet Manchester United, pound for point, as you say, far, far worse off than Tottenham. Yeah. And yet everybody talks as Man United as if they're, as you said, self-appointed Big Six and all that. They're lucky to be in that list nowadays.
Well, indeed they are, and they're now in their 7th year of transition.
Yes, yeah. Let's look at Tottenham. I mean, this thing about Tottenham fans saying he's taken us as far as he can. He's only been there 5 years. It's 7 years since Ferguson. 7 years since Ferguson left United, and yet people are still giving them sort of a grace period or whatever. Yeah. I mean, there's something fundamentally rotten at Manchester United.
Oh, absolutely.
Fundamentally
I don't
wrong.
think there's any question of that.
And it's not just because they've had several managers since Ferguson's gone. And Ferguson, actually, lately, I've seen him, on TV at the stadium, looks fit. I mean, I think maybe it might be time to bring him back. That'd be he's 70-odd years old. But really, is it as simple as just him? Was he such a great manager?
Oh, I think he was worth between 15 and 20 points a season to them.
Just him alone.
Oh, yeah.
That's a lot.
I know, but he was. You look at that squad, the squad that he handed over, and in fact, for 2 years before, I thought, I can't really see who the great players are here.
No.
It was all him. It really was him. Like, he had the same thing that Clough had. Nobody can make you play better than you're able to. but very, very few can make you play as good as is possible for you to play. And that's what Ferguson could do. Actually, the players played for him. They played to the absolute limit of their ability.
You're only as good as your worst player. Under him, they were all as good as their best player.
Yeah.
And kind of a different sort of motivational thing. I don't know, but there's something really wrong there, and there isn't that much wrong at Tottenham, apart from this European transfer.
It's uncertainty, is the problem.
That seems to be the problem there.
Give Arsenal a hammering today, and problem's gone away, hasn't it?
Yeah, well, we have got the North London Cup, the North London Derby this afternoon. As we're recording this, we're about 3 hours away from that. I don't really want to dwell on that too much because I'll jinx it, and I don't believe in any sort of superstitions, but I just don't... I mean, as a Tottenham fan, last year or the year before, I'd have been looking forward to this game. But somehow there is that strange atmosphere around the Tottenham camp, and I think for Arsenal, this is the best time they could play Tottenham. If they have to play them, I think they would be happy now, because Arsenal haven't had a bad start to the season.
A bit iffy, I think. It's not been fantastic.
No, I mean, they won the first two games, sorry.
And you still can't see a defence there.
Yeah, well, they won their first two games and they lost to Liverpool, which strangely was that day, last Saturday, was the only home victory among all the games that were played. Every other game was an away win, which was weird. But I don't know. I mean, you think Tottenham are going to win it? What, 2-1? Did you?
2-1. I reckon.
2-1. Yeah. I fear we might lose, but I think a draw would be. Right now would be a good thing for Tottenham. It depends on the team, but it is like we are a day or two away from this dreaded European transfer window. Maybe the Tottenham players and the board and the manager already know, because the deal might have been done yesterday or the day before. So they already know. So we'll see what happens with the team. But let's move on anyway. I want to talk about a little bit of sad story, really. Bury FC. I've been buried, I suppose, terrible cliche, but no longer. Well, they still exist, but they are no longer a member of the EFL, the English Football League. Membership of that, of course, is crucial. You can't be a professional football club without it.
Well, I don't know. I don't understand the structure beneath what we used to have 4 divisions, right, and then there was the Southern League and the Northern League. They have been demoted, relegated 5 divisions, apparently.
5. So, I mean,
but whether anybody has the money to actually finance a club of any, I don't know. I suspect at the moment the answer is they don't. So they will be liquidated. They'll go out of existence. Yeah, I mean, if you're a Bury fan, if you're a football fan, it's very sad, but it's a reality. The minute that you started to allow clubs to become limited companies, you had to accept that they will go bust, because limited companies do. It's commercial business.
Yeah, it's a really weird coincidence, but you said on the radio show that we do yesterday, and you used almost the exact phrase that had been in my head when I was thinking a couple of days ago about recording this podcast, because I knew people would say, "Oh, Manchester United should put their hand in the pocket and help them out." And I was ready, and you said it before it even came out of into my head, but it was a phrase that I had. When Woolworths went bust, Lidl didn't put their hand in the pocket. Oh, poor Woolworths, here's a few hundred million. Why would they? Why should they? Why should Manchester United or Manchester City? It's this sort of romantic kind of feeling around old clubs and around football, as this sort of romance and nostalgia that people forget it's a reality, and it's business.
Yes,
it's got nothing to do with the romance and all this kind of rubbish. Football is a business, just like anything else.
No, I mean all that romance died as soon as clubs were allowed to become limited companies. All the romance disappeared. It went. That was it. And fans haven't caught up with it. A lot of the criticism has been aimed at the Football League this week. Why did they pull the plug? And why were they not more sympathetic? Well, the Football League is not an independent body that sits on top and regulates it. The Football League is made up of the owners of the clubs in the Football League. And a significant number of those are very, very angry at how Bury have behaved and how they bought a promotion with money that they didn't have.
Yeah.
And so, it's very difficult to screw people, then turn around and say, "Oh, will you help me?" Which is the position that Bury put themselves in last week.
That's a very good point. It's something that people seem to have forgotten in all this debate. It is very sad for the fans and for the local community. And let's not forget the players and staff. I mean, the captain of the team came out last week and said he's now got to sell his house because not been paid.
Yeah.
And this is because of the way the business is run. The owner, Dale, came out on Radio 5 Live just last week, I think it was, saying that it doesn't matter to him. He didn't even know Bury had a football club before he bought the club, and he doesn't like football. That was last week. This week, he's now come out and written a very angry letter to the EFL saying that for the sake of history and all this, again, romantic sort of stuff, that they have no right to do this to Bury Football Club. He did it. He did it to Bury Football Club. Not the fans, not the EFL, not anybody. That greedy capitalist owner did it.
No, he and the person that he bought the club from, this guy, Day. Yeah. This is going to run through the courts because there's a lot of fraudulent things have gone on financially with this. And these people who appeared to want to buy Bury last week led the Football League to say, OK, we'll give you an extension of this deadline. As soon as they looked at the books, they walked away.
Yeah, what's their name? CNN Risk?
CNN, yeah.
But they've actually got the word risk in their name, and they walked away.
They walked away, yeah. And, you've got this football club, Bury, who play at Gig Lane in North Manchester, and that, 135 years they've been around, etc. All of that nice stuff, carrying 7 million of debt, supposedly to this guy Day, although nobody has been able to establish what this debt is. Is it real? And a mortgage on the Gig Lane ground of 3.7 million. The mortgage held by eight companies in the British Virgin Islands. I mean, come on, it's
scandalous and it's fraudulent.
Yeah, I mean, I think the English Football League, as a body, are not fit for purpose in terms of regulating the product, if you like. There should be an equivalent of Ofcom or something like that,
like an
independent regulator, and you can make a lot of arguments against them. But I've got a bit more sympathy with them in this because they were screwed, and there is a team currently in the division that Bury came from, that were denied their rightful promotion by this fraudulent behaviour by Bury, buying all these players they couldn't afford. And then when the banks started wanting the money, we can't do it. You've got to help us. Well, I don't think so.
No. You bought your way there, bribed your way there, if you like, overspent, and the result of that is your own fault. You're now being suspended or dropped out of the EFL. So they've only got themselves, if the owner to blame. The fans haven't, of course, and the players haven't.
No, the fans haven't, and the players haven't.
It's very, very sad for a 134-year-old club. Yeah. We know all the facts that they still hold the record for most goals scored in an FA Cup final. Doesn't count, doesn't matter. No. The fact is they screwed they've screwed themselves in many ways over the last few years by buying their way up the leagues.
Absolutely.
And the result is that they've been kicked out because, as you say, the other clubs aren't going to have any sympathy for them.
I mean, there is a further issue to this. You've got to take the next step and think, well, we've got a population of, 50 million in England? Yeah. Let's say 55 million in England. Okay, now 92 professional football clubs? I mean, it's not sustainable, is it? Look at American sport, the National Football League in America. I think there were, 32 teams for 250 million people?
Yeah, and it's still big business.
It's a very big business. And very, very well run.
Very well run, yeah. Very run to certain very high standards.
And one of the principles which backs up American sport, in fact all of them, is that income is shared. Because what you want is a sustainable business, sustainable competitions where everybody has a chance to win. So income is shared. And I think there are only some little things like executive boxes in stadiums, that income is not shared, but almost everything else is. TV revenue split evenly. That's got to be the model.
Yeah, and this is America, this great capitalist country.
Exactly, yeah.
And yet they have this modicum or sense of fairness.
Yeah,
and works in that sport.
And the draft, where they get their players from when they finish their careers in college, the worst team last year gets the first pick, and it goes on. So New England Patriots, who won the Super Bowl, they will get the last pick, designed to make the whole competition better and more even, so everybody has a chance to win.
So this would work like if I understand it correctly. If certain players, let's say Alexis Sanchez, Pogba, Vertonghen, Eriksson, and Callum Wilson from Bournemouth were all for sale, Watford, who are now currently bottom of the league, Watford would get to choose which one of those 5 players they want.
Well, no,
how would that work?
You can't translate it in that way. The draft only works for players coming out of college into the professional game.
So these academy.
But what then happens afterwards? They introduced maybe 25 years ago this concept that you couldn't just retain every player. There were only certain players. You had a specified number of players on your roster, in your team, that you could protect. So no other team could come and get them. And they don't have transfers where money changes hands. They have transfers where draft picks for the college picks. This player will go from this team to this team in exchange for a first-round draft pick next season. Okay? Now, it's then up to the player and his agents to negotiate the contract with the club. And one of the things that we've seen in the last few years in baseball and American football is that the owners are not prepared anymore to pay these $35-40 million contracts to players. They're just saying no. And some of the best players in baseball, pitchers and hitters in baseball in the last 2 years, have not been taken up by other clubs because the owners have said, no, actually the cost of taking you is too high. Why that matters, certainly in the Premier League, is that the owners that have come from American sport, they're running their businesses the same way. There's, the cost of getting into the top 4, with the exception of Potchettino, is $800 million.
As you said earlier in the show, I mean, $1.5 million to $2 million per point.
Yeah. So if somebody bought Newcastle, if the loony there was prepared to sell, it's going to cost him $400 million to buy the company. And he's got to turn that squad into a squad that can get the top 4. That's going to cost $800 million. So someone's going to spend £1.2 billion to play in the Champions League. And what returns do you get for doing that?
As a business proposal, it's. I mean, you're a businessman yourself. You invest money and everything in businesses and companies. That's not just. You wouldn't look at that, would you? If you were offered, I don't know, a chain of supermarkets, company that makes paint, or a football club, all at the same price. The football club would come as the highest risk or most pointless investment, I suppose.
Yes.
Why would you do it? I mean, we've talked about him before just because I happen to know him, but Simon Jordan, who bought Crystal Palace, he lost 80-odd million over the 10 years that he was there. He invested all his money into it because he was born on the same street where the ground was. His father played for Crystal Palace. He did it purely out of love, which is why his book is called, his autobiography is called Be Careful What You Wish For. Yeah. Because all his youth, all his young life, he dreamed of owning Crystal Palace. Yeah. Had a lot of money and he just spent it all on the club because he loved that club. Yeah. There's no other reason to do it, is there? Why would you want to be a football club owner? Well, it's not a prospect.
Of course, in those days, that's true. Now, with the TV deal that they have now, it's economic and those clubs will all make a profit. All the clubs in the Premier League will make profits now because of the TV revenue.
Right, okay. But you wouldn't buy Bury or Bolton.
Well, it would have to be for some personal sort of reason, yeah.
As I said, yeah.
But the teams in the bottom 2 divisions are not actually the ones at most risk. It's the teams in the Championship that are investing very, very heavily to get the golden goose in the Premier League.
To the Premier League, yeah.
And of course, only 3 of them are going to get promoted. So the bankruptcies are going to come in the Championship.
That's interesting. So that's kind of the risk area, is the Championship, and of course League One, which is I think where Bury come down from. Bolton were the other club at risk. They've survived.
Yeah, they appointed an administrator, and one of the things an administrator has to do is find a profitable future for the group of assets that he's managing, and this guy has done it. I think Anderson, the owner, was an absolute disgrace.
Which the administrator actually came out and blatantly said.
And that's so rare. You would not believe how difficult it is to get these professional people to offer an opinion normally. So for this guy to actually come out and say it must have been absolutely... It must have been really bad. What he was looking at in the books must have been quite appalling.
Yeah, he must have been absolutely shocked.
But, Bolton is a great name in the history of English football. And, I'm really pleased for them. They, the supporters who've worked behind the scenes, they've had this supporters club trying to do everything they can to motivate people to make something. They've done a fantastic job and they deserve this.
Yeah. to mention Bury and to give them due respect, I think it was something like 130 supporters turned up the week before last to clean the... Well, I won't call it a stadium.
It was last week, yeah.
Last week to clean the ground. 130 supporters, and there's pictures of them washing down the seats, cleaning the ground, and of course they didn't even get to play.
And the really great thing about that is they weren't all Bury supporters either. They were from Blackburn and Bolton and other clubs.
Showing their support.
Yeah.
Yeah, which, as we said, other businesses, clubs aren't going to, but in all due respect to the fans of Bury as well as Bolton, and other football clubs, they did show their support. Yeah. Bury went down. Bolton are on a 12-point deduction at the start of the season. The last few games they've played entirely, they've been thrashed every time, but entirely with youth players. Players.
That's right, yeah.
They got beaten 5-0 last week, and the attendance was 5,500, the lowest they've ever had at that stadium, which is only 22 years. But the lowest ever attendance, no first-team players playing. Bolton have got a long way to go yet.
They have a long way to go, and their situation does throw up another sort of funny thing, that if you're one of the teams in that division that hasn't played Bolton yet, you are now going to have to play Bolton when they are able to pay the professional players who didn't pay.
Basically, players like playing a different club entirely.
Yeah, and a much better one. So the team you will be playing is very different to the one that got hammered 5-0. Yeah, with all the youth team players. So
it's a bit unfair, yeah.
It's not perfect, but it's a much better situation than Bolton going out of business.
Yeah, getting kicked out of the EFL. So good luck to Bolton. Commiserations to Bury. I'm sure they'll bounce back at some point.
I'm not sure they will.
You don't think we'll see them back?
I mean, there's 7 million that Day is supposed to be owned. That's where some of this corruption comes in. They came out of administration with this, it's called a CVA. What happens is that the people who are owed money, the creditors, that's the C in the CVA, they were asked, would you accept to receive only 25% of what you're owed? And the voting doesn't go according to individual numbers, it's the level of your debt. Day claimed to have a debt of 7 million, which is far and away the biggest debt there. And he sold that debt to effectively his son-in-law, the partner of his daughter, for £70,000.
Wow, right.
Who then voted for this CVA that would net him £1.75 million. Now, it speaks for itself, doesn't it? And then you have the 3.7 million mortgage on the ground. The only way that these 8 British Virgin Island companies are getting their money back is if that ground is sold for hypermarkets, shopping mall development, residential development. It's the only way you get 3.7 million out of Gig Lane. So there won't be football there.
There won't be, no. Sorry, it's going to be a Lidl or an Aldi or something.
Well, it's going to have to be a lot bigger than Lidl or Aldi. They're small potatoes. It's going to have to be a big development.
You heard it here first, possibly. Before we finish and go to your quiz question, there is just one last thing I want to talk about very, very briefly. It's Chelsea. Yesterday, Sunday today as we're recording this, yesterday Chelsea were 2-0 up at home to newly promoted and another club with not a lot of money, Sheffield United. Yeah. They were 2-0 up. It finished 2-2. Never mind Tottenham losing at home to Newcastle. I think that was a bad day at the office, and there's a lot of speculation, as we said earlier in the show, about Tottenham. But what's happened at Chelsea? Because they're just not good. Thumped 4-0 by Manchester United.
What's happened at Chelsea in all of their games is exactly the same thing. Their transition from attack to defence is shocking. The amount of space between the lines, so between the back four and the mid 3, 4 or 5, whatever they're playing, it's acres of space there. And everyone that's played against them, so late in the second half, has gone from their penalty area to the edge of Chelsea's penalty area before any challenge is made. And that's happened in every single game. And he's got to get a grip here because everybody can see it. I mean, I was watching it on the screen here, and it happened every time. They just went end to end without anyone in Chelsea making a challenge. Right. And there's so much space for the players to run into. And all their goals came right-hand side of Chelsea's defence down that line.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking on the radio show for Global yesterday. One of our new regular pundits on that show, Jack. Hello, Jack. He's a Chelsea fan. He was bitterly disappointed, but not surprised. I mean, he was saying the problem is in defence, but especially Zuma in particular.
Oh, Zuma is just... he was always an accident waiting to happen, wasn't he?
But an accident's happening every week
And
now.
it's happening every week. When there's a problem with defence, it isn't the four in defence that you've got to look at. You defend as a team. And your first challenge should be made by your forward up at the other end, where Ian Rush used to make a challenge. If someone got past him, he'd tug his jersey, give away a free kick, and then you reset. No one's making that challenge. No Chelsea forwards making that challenge. They're bypassing the midfield. Nobody's making a challenge there. You've got to defend as a team, and they're not.
Yeah.
They're leaving it to the back four. And poor old Azpilicueta is sort of looking, okay, do I go to him? Do I stay? What are you doing? Looking at Zuma. And Zuma's just got this, he's like a rabbit in the headlights. Zuma should not be playing for a team as good as Chelsea. He just shouldn't.
So Chelsea are good, he's just not. And that's one of their major problems is at the back.
Well, that's it, yeah. They're not defending as a team.
All right, well, listen, we've just about run out of time. I don't know how I'm going to edit this. I might just leave it in. But by the time you listen to this, Arsenal and Tottenham will have played the North London derby, so commiserations to Steve Kenners-Kenton, or congratulations to Steve Kenners-Kenton. But before we do, Geoff, your trivia question at the top of the show. Repeat the question for me and give me the answer.
Right, the managers in the Premier League, Steve Bruce, Frank Lampard, Roy Hodgson, Chris Wilder and Dean Smith, all have something in common. Not that they're English.
Yeah, that was my first thought.
No, but they're all born within 10 miles of the ground that the club they're managing now.
Actually, 10 miles of the ground.
Yeah.
Wow.
They're all managing their local team.
The team that was nearest to them when they were born.
Frank Lampard is the furthest away.
I mean, we were saying about Simon Jordan, buying Crystal Palace because it was his homeboy team. These guys are all managing the team most local to them where they were born. And not by any sort of sentimental or emotional choice. It's just a weird coincidence, I suppose.
I don't know. Chris Wilder and Dean Smith may be sentimental choice. But
maybe, yeah.
That's
a beautiful, beautiful question. Maybe you could think of somebody else in that situation. But as far as the Premier League goes, those are the five that we know of.
Yeah, I mean, back in the day, before the war, maybe it was more common. I don't know.
Probably, yeah.
I mean, just think of the Lisbon Lions, the Celtic team that won the European Cup, first British team to win the European Cup. Every single player was born within 10 miles of the centre of Glasgow.
Yes. Yeah, wow.
And the manager, too. I mean, it's just, it doesn't happen nowadays.
Brilliant stuff on the trivia question there. Geoff, thank you. And thank you to Geoff Saunders, regular pundit on 93.6 Global Radio and this podcast. Thank you, Geoff.
You're welcome. Enjoyed it.
Big shout out to Steve Kenners-Kenton. He will be back on Karle and Kenners Hitting the Bar very shortly. But for this episode, thank you for listening. Thank you to our bar in the El Zoco Centre here in Calahonda in the south of Spain on the Costa del Sol for letting us record here. Thank you to 93.6 Global Radio for all their support. Thank you to TaxiPoint. We'll be back next week with more Karle and Kenners Hitting the Bar.
You've been listening to Karle and Kenners Hitting the Bar. Join us again next week for more of their twisted football news, all of their weird football views. You can find them here every week on Karle and Kenners Hitting the Bar. We'll see you again shortly.